I think that sometimes they fear that the tables might be turned on them, as them being the ones that were doing the abuse. In the summer of 2007, my wife and I at the time started the process of adopting 3 little boys. It was a very long and costly process, which at the time we were both willing to do for the safety of the boys. I did everything to ensure their stability, their routine, their loving, caring home that these boys desperately needed. I immediately got them involved in school and sports, in the community and church. And in 2011, the adoption was granted, and I felt like I had the perfect life. I had the wife that I loved and 3 little boys to complete my family. Soon after the adoption, my wife started showing some signs of hostility towards me and the children. She started to say things like I choose them over her, and that I would always take their side when she would try to discipline them. I spent every minute of my free time with the boys. I soon found us deeply involved in Salida sports, practices and tournaments, and ate up a lot of the time that I had for my marriage. And my wife started treating me and the boys with some resentful attitude. Her yelling at us was starting to get worse and worse. The physical abuse started soon after that with myself and the boys. She would abuse the boys when I was out of the house, calling them names, you know, jerks and punks and bastards, and that was bad. But the pinching their lips when they said yes instead of yes ma'am, the pulling them off the bunk bed, the hitting them with a closed fist was horrific. And I found caught in the middle. And the physical abuse started with me soon after that. She would push and she would yell, and it was the verbal abuse and the throwing of things, and then it escalated into hitting. The first time she actually hit me, she broke my rib. I gathered up the 3 boys, left the home, not to return for some time. I always thought this behavior would change in her. I made excuses in my mind every day why she'd become like this. Was it just too much for her to handle the 3 little boys? I constantly made excuses for what was going on in my home. And I always thought I could fix the problem. The problem only got worse. Many more times over the next couple of years, I was hit by her. The boys and I had developed a walk-on-eggshell approach around her. Everything we did was to not upset her. And it got really bad. We couldn't live our life like that much longer. In June of 2012, she became so violent. To this day, I'm still not quite certain what the argument was about, but in June she became violent and striking me in my face and cutting my cheek. And once again I swept up the boys and we left. And that day I never intended for the law enforcement to get involved. I simply just took my boys and we left. A neighbor upstairs had heard the confrontation and called the police, and the police called me on my phone, had me return to my home with the children. When I returned to the home, the officers saw the scratch on my face and right away arrested my wife for domestic violence. This is where my life changed for the better, not because she was arrested, but for the helpful pamphlet that the Salida police officer gave me about the Alliance Against Domestic Abuse. He suggested I take my children down there, that they were good people to talk to in this circumstance. They might be able to guide me which way I needed to go. Walking into that Alliance office was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It took me about 4 days and about 20 minutes in the parking lot before I decided to go in and tell them my story. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed that I let my family slip so out of control like it did. the staff down there instantly took us in and made us feel welcome. And I met with Debbie Quintana and immediately began to tell her how I ended up in her office. And I think I probably went through a whole box of tissues too that day. And at the same time, my boys went with Marcy Bradford, and she took them into a room filled with toys and games, and she instantly made them feel comfortable and welcome. And I must say, the attentiveness of Debbie and Marcy that day was what made me go back the next day. They listened to me, unlike nobody has listened to me in years. I sat on that couch, like I say, I cried. I went through a whole box of tissues. She stayed so attentive and so focused on how much courage it took for me to come in, that I was doing the right thing for my boys, kept me focused on the boys. Priority was the boys. And she explained to me what domestic violence was and that I was a victim of it. I didn't even consider myself a victim of domestic violence at the time. And I kept blaming myself for the things that had gone wrong in my home. Debbie explained to me that what was happened to me was very typical, in that domestic violence usually starts with the verbal and mental abuse and then escalates to the physical. And that I wasn't alone, that there was other men out there that were going through the same thing. They gave me insight on how to deal with the boys and their issues, and what they needed immediately was me to be strong. And I was a mess for the first month. I was really bad. I think I went into the office every day, and the whole time Debbie kept me focused on the boys and what they needed me to be and how they needed me to respond to this situation. The support the Alliance gave me went way beyond facts and kind words and understanding. They gave me a name of a great psychologist for my boys and I to contact. They also gave me a complete understanding of the court proceedings that were to come. I had a lot of confusion as to what was to come with the courts, and Debbie would always show up with me. Every court date I have, to this day, she still shows up with me to give me support and guidance and just a friendly face in the crowd. And for that, I'll forever be grateful for her. I have formed a strong bond with the Alliance down in Salida, a friendship that I believe that'll last forever, and this is why I'm here tonight. The Alliance has given me more than I can ever express to you guys tonight. This is why I'm asking, all of you for your help. We need to get them the help they need to help other folks that are in my predicament. And many other women, men, and children need them. And as a community, we're the only ones that can help them. And by me giving this speech and talking to you folks, maybe we can get them the help they need to help other children in the community. I would just like to thank you and do a shout out again to Mandy Trollope and Debbie Quintana, Marcy Bradford, my great psychologist, Marianne Longwell, and all of you as well. And then I would like to give a shout out to the Salida Police Department, because without their information, I would have never known where to go. So thank you for hearing me.